Over the past few years, many content creators have talked about the next Doom game, but I've inarguably made more videos on the subject than anyone else. This content typically ranges from analyzing leaks and developer interviews to speculating and discussing various aspects of the game, but I feel as if it's gotten a bit hard to tell what's a fact and what's a theory. Because of that, I decided to make one final video going over every important aspect of id Software's next game in the most honest way possible before moving on to creating a different type of Doom content. Let's start with the biggest question. What is id Software currently working on? The honest truth is that we don't know. Game director Hugo Martin has previously stated that they do plan on creating another Doom game at some point, but we have no idea when that will be. For over 2 years, job listings have referred to the next game as a AAA single-player experience with narrative elements focusing on a lone hero with an incredible arsenal going up against hordes of enemies across both sci-fi and fantasy locations. Machine Games has yet to finish their Wolfenstein series, the Rage franchise is far from being the most successful series, and it doesn't seem like they have much interest in creating a mature Commander Keen reboot, so it comes down to Doom, Quake, or a new IP. These job descriptions can easily fit either franchise, which has made it nearly impossible to determine what's being made. But what about Doom Year Zero, the game that was leaked during Microsoft's Activision Blizzard court trial? That leak was as real as it gets. It's now 100% confirmed that Year Zero was planned at some point, however the leak was also heavily outdated. While the ZeniMax financial forecast document was released in 2023, it was created in the latter half of 2019 and the release schedule definitely reflects that. Almost everything listed was delayed by at least a full year due to the global pandemic. Year Zero was initially set to release in 2023 along with one expansion releasing the same year and another in 2024, though that's obviously no longer happening. We know for a fact that Year Zero was delayed, although I personally believe that it was replaced by something else. After working on the Doom franchise for nearly 14 years straight, id Software decided to conclude the current storyline in the Ancient Gods Part 2 by sealing Hell back up, killing off a main villain of a franchise, and putting the Slayer to rest. They have a lot of love for their franchises, and I don't think it would make sense for them to conclude the storyline if they had plans to make another Doom game directly after Eternal. But that's just my personal opinion, and it should not be taken as fact. Putting Year Zero aside, do we have any additional information on the next Doom game? Yes, we do, but it's loose ideas that are not set in stone. Throughout the developer livestreams and interviews featuring Hugo Martin, we've heard some details about his visions for a bold sequel to Doom Eternal. If you're a Ferrari in this game, then why should you be driving in the next game? I think you should be driving a monster truck. I'd like to feel the weight. In Eternal, I feel like an F-22 Raptor. Maybe we go for an A-10 Warthog with a huge-ass Gatling gun on the front. This is by far the most well-known statement regarding the next game. It gives us a good idea of what Hugo has in mind for the overall combat style, although nothing is confirmed since the game is likely still years away. The general theme is that the next game should be slower but more destructive than Doom Eternal. The car analogy is self-explanatory, and after doing some research, it turns out that an A-10 Warthog is slower but much more destructive than the F-22 Raptor. If they decide to follow through with this concept when creating the next title, you shouldn't expect it to be as slow as Doom 3, but don't be surprised if it's not an exact copy of Eternal. When asked about the future of the makers after the end of Tag 1, Hugo has stated that they'll go through the transfiguration process like Samur did and become Cthulhu-like monsters. While this doesn't confirm that they'll be the next big villains of the Doom franchise, it does at least heavily imply that they'll be returning in a sequel to Eternal. Hell was permanently sealed off when the Dark Lord died at the end of Tag 2, so they're pretty limited in what they can do when it comes to the enemies. They could still include demons if the game is a prequel, but there's no indication as to what time period it will be set in. Hugo has also commented on the inclusion of a new protagonist, stating that he's put a lot of thought into the idea of a female Slayer. I would really strive to have it impact the gameplay in a way that was meaningful. I've definitely put a lot of thought into that actually. I think if we did it, I want it to be lethal. I think it's interesting how it would impact the glory kills and the weapons that she would have. The fighting style would certainly be all aggression, absolutely, but a different type of aggression. He also used another car analogy to explain the theoretical changes in combat. Tonally, when it comes to designing the action, you think about, if a Slayer is a Ferrari, then what would a female Slayer be? What would a medieval Slayer be? How would that affect things, and what sort of analogies would you draw from that to allow it to influence the experience? It would definitely be cool. While this certainly doesn't confirm that a new character will take the Slayer's place, it does show that they're open to trying new things and experimenting with the combat. Regardless of which direction they go or what franchise they choose, one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind is, will id Software's next game be Xbox exclusive? And the answer is way more complicated than it needs to be. In the time since Microsoft acquired Bethesda, we've received several answers from various official sources that contradict each other and make it pretty difficult to figure out what's going on. One of these statements came out during Microsoft's Activision Blizzard court trial back in June when Xbox CFO Tim Stewart was questioned about a conversation with head of Xbox Tim Booty, where it was supposedly confirmed that all Bethesda titles would be exclusives going forward. This was then contradicted a few months later in November when Tim Stewart stated that Xbox was changing their strategy. Not announcing anything broadly here, but our mission is to bring our first-party experiences and our subscription services to every screen that can play games. That means smart TVs, that means mobile devices, that means what we would have thought as competitors of the past like PlayStation and Nintendo. As I was writing this script, a ton of information started leaking regarding Xbox exclusivity policy towards all of their games. Multiple sources were claiming that most, if not all, games from Xbox-owned studios will be multi-platform going forward, including previously released games like Starfield. While it's important to note that these claims have yet to be verified, Phil Spencer has announced an Xbox Business Update event following the leaks, where he'll presumably reveal their stance on exclusives. Hi-Fi Rush was one of the first exclusive games released by Bethesda since the acquisition, and it just received an update that added cosmetics featuring the Nintendo and PlayStation logos, confirming that it will be coming to other platforms. This, along with Tim Stewart's statement and the overwhelming amount of new leaks, suggests that the game may not be exclusive, although it's far too early to tell. I'll be making a follow-up video next week if the business event has any important information, but until then it's best to take everything with a grain of salt. We may not know if the game is going to be exclusive or not, but do we know when it's going to get announced and released? No, we unfortunately don't. However, we finally reached a point in time where a reveal is more than possible. Old job listings and developer statements imply that they started preparing for their next project around the time that Tag 2 released in March of 2021. But it's likely that the majority of the team didn't start working on the game until the second half of the year when Update 6.66 launched and more listings started popping up. The game has been in development for 2.5 years at the very least, so a reveal is now on the cards. The Xbox Summer Showcase should be happening later this year in June, and QuakeCon will be held sometime in August. Those are the two most likely places for a reveal if they're ready to show something this year. A lot of you may also be wondering what Machine Games will release after Indiana Jones, but we know even less about that project. Job listings for an unannounced game with a multiplayer component have at least confirmed that something is in the works, but it could literally be anything, including Wolfenstein 3 or Quake 6. This may be upsetting to hear, but the recent Quake 6 teaser from the Xbox Developer Direct was supposedly just a joke. Click on the video that's on screen now to learn more. Thank you all so much for watching today's video, I hope you enjoyed it. That's pretty much all that I have for now though. Until next time.